Up until I was 23 years old, I was an autistic person living my life not knowing I was autistic. And this was a really challenging experience. And in this video today, I want to talk about how me realizing that I am on the autism spectrum and me receiving an autism diagnosis first made my life worse, but also made my life better. So thank you so much for tuning into this video today. And in an effort to keep my videos true from my heart and just as real and as authentic as possible, I'm not going to make any edits in this video. There might be some long pauses of me trying to formulate my thoughts and my feelings into words and into language. I might stutter, I might stumble on my words, but I think that that's real and that's authentic, and so I'm just going to leave those things in there. So I had always felt different growing up. I had always felt like I didn't really understand my peers in school. I didn't understand why they did the things that they did and why they acted the way that they acted. And I also felt misunderstood by them. I felt like I was sort of an outcast, and I always did my best to try to fit in, which I now realize was me trying to mask and me trying to seek approval. But I felt different, and there's not really any other way to describe it. I might say that I felt like an alien, and I did. I felt like there was just something different about me compared to everyone else that I saw, whether it was in school or maybe even through various forms of media like movies and TV and even on social media. Growing up, I felt different, and I didn't know exactly what that was. And I don't even think I realized in the time of me growing up how different I felt. I thought that feeling was just normal. I thought that was something that everyone felt. And so fast forward now to I think I was probably 22, right about to turn 23, when things kind of started to click for me. I had no idea what autism was. I think I only knew like the stereotypical versions of autism, nonverbal, very apparent stimming behaviors, and that's pretty much all I knew about autism. And then I started watching the show Love on the Spectrum, and I think that was like the first time in my life where I was like, wait, the people that they're showing on the show, I can actually relate to these people. I don't feel different from these people like how I felt different from everyone else up to that point in my life. And still, I didn't know what autism was. And I'm like, no, I can't be autistic. I can have conversations. I can't be autistic. I made it through school. I can't be autistic. I'm an adult. I wasn't diagnosed when I was a kid. And then I started thinking, what even is autism? And I kind of started looking into it. I did a few self quizzes and self tests. And on all of those, my score was very likely autistic. And I think my rigid thinking style and my black and white type of thinking was like, Nope, still can't be autistic. I don't have a diagnosis for it. And then I started looking into it a little bit more. And I started reading more about it, watching more videos about autistic people sharing their experiences. And I'm like, that's me. That's me. That's me. That's me. That's me. That's me. And it was kind of this awakening in a way where, for the first time in my 22 or 23 years of being alive, I finally had words and I finally had ways to describe all these confusing things about the inner workings of my mind. When I was in high school and beyond high school, I sort of developed a special interest in psychology and personal development, which kind of led me down to a spiritual path. And I think what sparked my interest in those things, in psychology and in personal development, was me wanting to understand human behavior, because it was so hard to understand. I wanted to learn these things so that I could understand other people and so that I could try to be like other people. And so I had a ton of information stored in my brain about psychology, mental health, personal development. Yet most of those things didn't really resonate with me. I tried to force myself to agree with and believe those things. But it never felt aligned. It never felt like this actually explains me. And with that, I tried to mask even harder. I watched a lot of YouTube videos to learn ways that people have conversations. It's kind of weird looking back on all the things I did when I was younger, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. I'm like, how did no one know? How did no one know that I was autistic? But I can make a video about that later. And so now, 22, 23, I'm learning about autism, and I'm realizing that all of these things explain my childhood, my social differences, my sensory issues that I didn't know. I thought everyone had extreme sensory issues. Growing up, I was always bothered by smells. They would distract me, they would hurt my head, they would make me feel so uncomfortable. I would be so irritable, and I didn't know why. And now I understood, oh, it's because my brain processes and takes in information differently. And now that I had this language to describe how my brain worked and how I process information, it felt like a light bulb above my head just lit up so bright. This explains everything. And then there was that doubt. There was that black and white, rigid style thinking. I can't be autistic. I don't have an autism diagnosis. And I think that was probably the main reason why I wanted to seek a professional's opinion on this, because I wanted to know for sure. I had a hard time self-diagnosing, because there was always going to be that question in my head. What if I'm just making all of this up? And of course I knew that I wasn't, but I think that comes from a life of being gaslit about my own experience. to where I'm starting to gaslight all these things that I know to be true about myself. And so I wanted to get an outside opinion. And I think it's a good thing to do that if you have the means and if it's accessible for you. But I also understand that healthcare is extremely expensive and extremely inaccessible. And that's a topic for a completely different video. So I looked around in my area and I found 2 different neuropsychologists who performed autism assessments on adults. Just 2 in my whole area. First one, 12-month wait. Second one, 10-month wait. So I went with the second one. Still felt like an eternity, but it was 2 months shorter of waiting. And in that time from when I started realizing that I could be autistic, all the way up and even during my appointments to be assessed for autism, it was a really challenging and really hard time in my life. And the only way that I could describe it is almost like an ego death in a way. Everything that I thought I knew about myself, everything that I thought my future would be, shattered. It changed in an instant because I'm realizing all these things. Things are clicking for me. I'm finding the puzzle pieces that I've been looking for my entire life, and they're fitting perfectly into place. And this isn't how I lived my life, and this isn't how I thought I would live my life going forward. And I was realizing a lot of things. I was realizing a lot of ways, like I mentioned, that I was gaslit about my internal experience by the external world and by myself, because I thought that, oh, everyone experiences those things. Those things are normal. I struggled with the relationships that I had in my life because I felt like I finally understand these things about myself, but how do I explain these to other people? Other neurotypical people who have no idea what I'm even talking about. I struggled with a lot of hard days, feeling burnt out, questioning, is this my life forever? Constant shutdowns, constant meltdowns, feeling so lost, so confused, and not knowing who I was. And then it comes time for my autism appointments, 4 appointments over a month-long span. And this is kind of when things started to shift just a little bit. This was a very uncomfortable month, just kind of in that liminal waiting period. And I was like, it all comes down to that last appointment, and that's going to tell me if all my suspicions of the past year and a half are true, or if I'm making it up, or if it's something else. And I didn't know how I felt about any of those options. I think I was just kind of numb and just kind of trying to keep my head down and just trying to get through it because it was really hard. It was really exhausting. She starts the last appointment by explaining how I definitely have generalized anxiety disorder, which I knew. I've gotten that diagnosis before. And then she starts to explain that a lot of this anxiety that I have felt my entire life is most likely caused by my autism. And she diagnosed me with autism spectrum disorder level 1. And I felt like that was a fitting diagnosis. And I think that was one of the reasons why I was scared to self-diagnose, because I am able to acknowledge that I may have fewer challenges than some other people on the autism spectrum. Yet I'm still autistic. I still have an autistic brain, and I still have certain challenges. And so I think the lower support needs autism was a fitting diagnosis. And I think I was still kind of numb after receiving that diagnosis. And then that afternoon it kind of hit me out. I felt pretty emotional. It was kind of like just like a release of everything from my childhood. It was like a release of everything from the past year and a half. And I realized now I can start healing, because I know this information about me, this information that I deserve to know about myself, that I deserve to know about my brain. And yet I still felt lost. I still felt confused. I felt like there were so many things that I did in my life that didn't suit me anymore, didn't serve me, that didn't work for me, that led me to feeling burnt out, that led me to feeling exhausted, that caused me to have frequent shutdowns pretty much every week, that sometimes turned into screaming and crying meltdowns. But at least now I have this information. And I was still trying to process it. I think that it didn't come as a shock to me that she diagnosed me with autism. I think I'd kind of already accepted that I was autistic, but I just wanted that final confirmation. And then from that point to now, it has been the most healing and transformational time in my life. There have been some hard days. I have felt still a lot of confusion about myself, about my place in the world, about what I should be doing versus what I need to be doing for myself. But I finally started to have more answers than I had questions. And I found ways to design my life in a way that supported my autistic self. I found ways to accommodate myself. I found ways to explain my autism to other people, to the people that I love. I found ways to accept myself. I found ways to work through a lot of shame, a lot of self-doubt that I had about myself. And I'm really grateful for that process. Within these past few months, I feel like I'm peeking over the mountain, and I can see the other side. And on the other side are so many luscious, vibrant green trees. There's a rainbow on the other side. There's a river on the other side flowing into a beautiful lake, and even more mountains in the distance. And I'm really grateful for this journey, even though it's been hard. And I know that it's going to continue to be hard. Being an autistic person is challenging. And then being an autistic person in this society is even more challenging. But now I have the answers, and now I have the resources to work through those challenges in ways that will support my best version of myself. A version that isn't created by anyone or anything out there, but a version that is created from the deepest depths of my soul. And I'm grateful for that. So this is just your reminder. There might be some things that you relate with on me sharing my journey. There might be some things that you don't relate with. And I can already think of some people saying like, "Oh, I wish I was at a place where you are in my journey." And to respond to that, I would say, you're at a place in your journey where you need to be right now. I don't want it to come across as me saying, "Oh, I'm completely healed. I no longer have any issues with my autism." That's never going to be a thing. There's always going to be different things that come up and show up. Different deeply held beliefs that come to the surface that need to be worked through. Because that's life. There's always going to be the next thing to work on. There's always going to be the next thing that comes up. And so I don't want you to compare your journey to my journey, because we are completely different people on completely different life paths, although we do share some similarities. And if I can find peace, even with my autism, even with my mental health struggles, I want you to know that it is possible for you. And also, you are where you need to be right now. Because there's lessons you need to learn. There's things that you need to realize about yourself. And those things will arise when you can stay true to your own path. And more importantly, believe in your path, have faith in your path. And the reason that you should believe that the path that you're on is the right path for you is because that is the path that you're on. Everything in your past has led you to this specific moment in time. And you're here now because that's where you are meant to be.